What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Week 13 NFL Power Rankings. Just a note before we get started here, I am doing this before the Ravens-Steelers finale to Week 12 of the NFL season. That game obviously getting pushed back for COVID, factoring in the COVID stuff the best we can here, but I'm not going to wait till Thursday to do the Power Rankings. Steelers heavy favorites. I'm kind of making this assuming they will win. Any changing of opinion will be reflected in next week's Power Rankings if that ends up happening. So doing the best we can with what we've got here. Before we do get started, please do hit that like button down below. Really appreciate you guys. We're like 8 likes short of 1,000 last week, so if we could hit that here for Week 13, that would be just fantastic. I appreciate all of you. Let's get into it. Starting at the bottom, the New York Jets staying put. More predictable play calling, 3rd and short, 4th and short. Sam Darnold not looking good in his sort of audition return here. Jets basically trying to make him look good to increase the draft pick that they will probably get for him after they draft Trevor Lawrence. So we'll continue to monitor that as we go. Let's move on to the Cincinnati Bengals at 31. Don't pay attention to that final score. They got just bludgeoned by the Giants in this game. It was one of the laziest, weirdest 6.5-point covers you could imagine. I mean, they were well on track to losing this game by double digits. You get a kick return touchdown, which was basically their only production until a garbage time touchdown that came late in this game. Daniel Jones goes down with the injury in this one. Don't be fooled. The Bengals are right there with the Jets for the worst teams in football. And that is why they're going to be a tier gap below everyone, really in their own garbage tier of teams that I'd be pretty shocked if either of these guys won a game the rest of the season. Then the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to drop down a spot. They're at least competitive. It doesn't seem to matter who they play at offense. Jay Gruden, these receivers, they make some plays. Defense is young and not very good, but they do seem to be a team that you at least have to show up and play relatively well to beat. So whatever that's worth, they're better than the Bengals and the Jets. Then the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm ready to say it. I've been kind of ahead of the game here saying Doug Pederson is a bottom 5 coach in the NFL. I said that last year. I am now to the point I'm ready to say he is actually the worst coach in the NFL. Yes, more so than Adam Gase, because at least the players that take the field for Adam Gase, when they snap the ball on offense, they at least know what the play call is and don't get lost and know what their assignment is and what they're supposed to do. I've been saying that about Doug Pederson all year long, but look no further than a tweet that Jeff Schwartz pulled up on Twitter, pointing out that the Eagles called a screenplay and none of the receivers knew that it was a screenplay. So the offensive line lets everyone go. They start running upfield. Carson Wentz all of a sudden looking for his receiver option and no one turned for the football, and Wentz had to either get sacked or throw it away. I don't even remember what happened at that point, but it goes to show you that obviously Carson Wentz is not playing well, but he's just not free of blame. This is not something that is stemming from one tweet. Anyone that's watched the Eagles, it feels like they snap the ball and you've got free rushers coming in. You've got linemen just watching guys run past them. You've got receivers and Carson Wentz not on the same page. It has just been an absolute mess. It couldn't be any more clear that Frank Reich was the mastermind of this Super Bowl offense, because they have only gotten worse year after year after he left. So to me, you fire Doug Pederson tomorrow. You've seen enough. This team is not going to compete this year. They just aren't. And honestly, I would sit Carson Wentz down. You've invested enough in him. Sit him down before he gets another serious injury or has more mental regression having to play in this mess. I'm not trying to say Carson Wentz is playing well. He obviously has not. But see what you have in Jalen Hurts. Just blow this thing up. Restart. It's just unacceptable what's going on here. I think Doug Pederson is the worst head coach in the NFL today. Then the Dallas Cowboys are also going to drop down 4 spots. The Eagles and Cowboys, this is just deplorable, laughable, inexcusable, embarrassing. Do you know how many teams on this list that we're going to talk about would love to have the opportunity to win their division, get a home playoff game, and all they have to do is beat the Washington football team with Alex Smith, the quarterback? And the Cowboys get blown out the doors. Do you need any more evidence that Aaron Rodgers' entire career was wasted in Green Bay under Mike McCarthy? This guy cannot coach. The defense doesn't want to play. It seems like anywhere he goes, the defensive backs just forget how to play football. And the offense, they've had a lot of injuries, but we know Andy Dalton is not this bad. And they're not getting that out of him. They're not getting anything out of him. He made one nice throw in that game. It's just disgusting. The Eagles, the Cowboys, I don't even like talking about them. It's just so awful. The Denver Broncos are going to climb up a spot. They go to Kendall Hinton. Keep that name in your back pocket for future sports trivia guys, because this was a weird one. Their entire quarterback room ends up having to sit and watch because of close contact COVID tracing. And they pull up a receiver off the practice squad, and he completes one pass and throws 2 interceptions. So, the final score is what it is. It's not a big deal. This team is simply more competitive than the Cowboys and Eagles right now. Then the Detroit Lions, who've had a rough couple weeks, but a good week in general for the Lions fans, as the ownership has acknowledged that they need to tear this thing down top to bottom and do a new rebuild. So Bob Quinn is gone, Matt Patricia is gone. Going to be really fascinating to see the direction they go. Usually when a team fires their coach, I kind of have a strong opinion about what they should do. I don't really have that with the Lions. I don't know at this point in time what the right thing is to do with Matthew Stafford, who the right coaching candidates would be. I do think that this team would be better off kind of doing what the Washington team did with a Ron Rivera, who's an established head coach who can come in, set the culture, and get this team back on track. And an interesting name there is Jim Harbaugh, interstate there with Michigan. Just going to throw that out there. Lots of talk to be had. But for now, Detroit's going to drop down 3. I don't see them having some miracle turnaround for the remainder of the season under the interim head coach. So that tier was sort of, obviously trash can teams, but teams that are at least on a weekly basis more competitive than your bottom of the barrel guys. Then we've got a larger gap here. These are more of your weekly spoiler teams that you do really have to show up to beat, and they can kind of win some games moving forward. So then we've got the Washington football team moving up 5 spots. They are just a well-coached team. They take care of the football. They have done a great job to kind of figure out some playmakers here. Antonio Gibson looks great. Logan Thomas making some plays. You obviously have Terry McLaurin there. Offensive line coming together. The defense coming together. Everything's just kind of slowly coming together, and you're getting this obviously not great football team, but a team that looks kind of poised to win the NFC East, just maybe, because we got the New York Giants are going to climb up the spot, beating the Bengals this week. But news coming out about Daniel Jones, going to miss some time. I do think with a healthy Daniel Jones, the Giants are the better football team. They've swept the Washington football team this year. It's shown, but that is definitely just another wrinkle in this, let's just say, fascinating NFC East race. But then we have the Houston Texans, who are going to drop down a spot. I know they're playing well, Texans fans. Watson looks amazing. Clearly a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now, and he's going to be a very attractive quarterback for a future head coach to come in and work with, despite the fact that they don't really have room to build the team at the moment. But Will Fuller out for the rest of the season with a suspension. Same thing with one of their top corners, Bradley Roby. That's going to hurt a little bit of momentum, especially with Will Fuller, the way he's playing right now. But all in all, Texans kind of staying put in the mid to high 20s here. But the 49ers, the reason the Texans are dropping down, because they are not really anymore the 49 IRs. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle are still out, but you get Debo back, you get Sherman back, and all of a sudden things start to click here. This is still quite possibly the most well-coached team in the league outside of New England, and it shows. I mean, they beat the Rams this week. They came out to play. They're not out of this thing yet. They're, 5-6? Might be a little bit too far behind, but keep an eye on those 49ers. We know they're dangerous, defending NFC champs. Then the Chicago Bears, still actually getting some respect here because of the way this defense can play. Now, it did not show up this week, and I am definitely worried and keeping note on the fact that at some point this defense just stops trying. When they're on the field for 40 out of 60 minutes a game, and it's constant 3-and-outs, it's constant turnovers. Mitchell Trubisky, I mean, his coffin was already nailed shut and in the ground, but this thing, it's like an earthquake showed up and took it another 5 miles deep into the Earth's core. Like, Mitchell Trubisky is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. We already knew that, but it's even worse now. That was just ugly. But yeah, I mean, they still have a top 3 defense in the NFL if they decide they want to try. But man, this offense is ugly. It's right there with the Bengals and the Jets, the worst in the league right now, and frankly the Eagles as well. But then the Carolina Panthers, they're going to stay put at 20. If you didn't watch this game, believe it or not, they actually had the ball in the red zone at the goal line with 2 minutes to go with a 3-point lead, and they end up losing this game. So kind of a collapse for the Panthers, but they did get some defensive luck as well with a couple of scoop and score touchdowns. But yeah, they're the Panthers. They can move the ball on offense. They have Teddy Bridgewater, which limits their ceiling, and then they're trying to figure out who can play on defense. You get Jeremy Chin scores 2 defensive touchdowns in this game, kind of getting into the defensive player of the year conversation. I don't know how much picking up 2 fumbles and running them into the end zone truly does for your case there, but it's not a great pool of candidates. So if you're a Panthers fan, maybe you can root for that. And then the LA Chargers, again, this team is just super competitive, but Anthony Lynn kind of holds this team back. It's just conservative play calling. It's punting when they should be going for it, field goals when they should be going for it, just the conservative play calling in general. The decisions to run instead of pass when Justin Herbert is showing the things he has. I mean, I don't hate Anthony Lynn. I think he could actually get hired. I could even see him going to like Detroit and kind of fixing the culture there, something like that. But when you now know that Justin Herbert is this high upside, explosive passing option, you just want better for yourself than Anthony Lynn, who just doesn't elevate a whole lot here. So the Chargers are going to stay put. They're not an easy out. Joey Bosa deserves a shout out. He has been incredible, really incredible this week, was all over the place against the Bills. And then speaking of shout outs, we got to give a shout out to Raheem Morris, the Falcons defensive coordinator. The Falcons are going to climb up 3 spots here. It really could not be more apparent that Dan Quinn just was not a good head coach from the get-go. For 4 or 5 years, there was never any development or cohesion on this defense at all. All of a sudden, after 5 weeks, Raheem Morris has the Falcons looking like a top 10 defense. They're playing fast, they're covering better, they're rushing the passer better, they're defending the run better. It's just all these guys are just playing so much better. I don't know if Morris has quite the resume to be considered for a head coaching candidate, maybe a guy that Detroit would look at just as a high culture kind of guy. But anyway, I do think bringing him back as the defensive coordinator here in Atlanta would be a super smart decision if they can pull that off. But the Falcons are going to round out that middling tier of teams that are not playoff teams, unless you're an NFC East team, but teams that are still trying hard down the stretch and are not easy outs. And that's going to bring us into this next tier of guys that, again, probably not playoff teams, but definitely teams that have some long shot hope and are even a step above those guys we just talked about, as far as you do not want to have to play these guys on Sundays. And that's going to start with the New England Patriots, who picked up a huge win over the Cardinals. This is exactly what a Bill Belichick team does, right? Even if they don't have a lot of talent, they figure out what their strengths are and they maximize on them. The secondary has been balling out lately. This defense is playing much better. As we kind of knew that would happen. It happens every year with Belichick defenses. But the offense has done a great job to identify some of those strengths. They are not asking Cam Newton to throw the ball deep and have an explosive passing game. Yes, it limits their upside, and don't get me wrong, this is not a particularly good offense, but they at least know what they want to do. They have a great offensive line. They've got some good running backs in there now. Cam Newton factors in the run game and in the short to intermediate passing game. Jacoby Myers has stepped up, so they have an identity on offense. They are not an easy out by any stretch of the imagination, just as we saw them knock off the Cardinals this week. And then the Miami Dolphins, they're going to drop down a spot because our next team, to me, is more impressive. And if they were playing on Sunday, I'd be picking our next team. But yeah, the Dolphins, they beat the Jets this week. I'm definitely worried about this offensive line. Something to keep an eye on if they bring Tua back, who has been banged up a little bit here. A guy with injury concerns coming out of college. To me, I was critical of how the Dolphins handled that offensive line and really didn't think they did the best job they could to put the best unit they could in front of Tua. Made a couple right moves there, but yeah, it just did not look good against the Jets at all this week. Obviously, this team got blown out last week, so some of that shine wearing off for the Dolphins, but they're still a team that's going to compete for that 7th seed in the AFC. And then that one team that I think is just a better football team than Dolphins and has kind of shown that over the last month of the season is the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, they lost to Dallas last week, kind of a late game heartbreaker. But to me, you got to give a ton of credit to Mike Zimmer. Kirk Cousins is playing really well. No Adam Thielen out there this week, and the offense continued to roll. Justin Jefferson, simply just one of the best receivers in the NFL this season. And the defense has played much better and more physical after looking like a really bad unit early on. So credit to Mike Zimmer, the veteran defensive mind that he is, for at least getting these guys in the right places. To me, the Vikings are just a team that, if a few things went differently early on, they lost some close games, Danielle Hunter missing the season, a couple things, all of a sudden, Vikings down the stretcher would actually be a really scary, potentially like top 10 team in the NFL. And they're not quite out of it yet, which the rest of the NFC definitely has their eyes on these Vikings and does not want to see them any week for the final 5 weeks of the season. So then we have a tier gap up, and these are guys that I think are in really good playoff position that just need to kind of respond and finish strong down the stretch. And that's going to start with the Raiders. Only going to drop down one spot against the Falcons. We don't overreact. It's definitely a trap game for the Raiders. I will say that I've had them a little lower than quote-unquote consensus, and Raiders fans have come at me. So now it happens all the time. You get to be happy with me now that I don't overreact like I didn't in the first place and put them in the top 10. And I only am dropping them one spot here after losing to the Falcons. Look, the reality is the Raiders are an extremely well-coached football team. They play really physical, and they're an extremely tough out. I think they are going to get a playoff spot in the AFC. But they just don't have a lot of talent. It's why I was low on them from the beginning. That was just evident in this game against the Falcons. When you get off script, they don't have those guys to lean on. Derek Carr is not a guy that can carry your offense if things aren't going well. And just don't even get me started on this defense. It's not a good defense. Most Raiders fans agree with me on that one. So Raiders are going to drop down a spot. I think they'll be fine. Just a really rough week at the office here against the Falcons. Then the Cleveland Browns going to climb up a spot. I know it was just the Jags, but this was a big deal for Cleveland. Kind of a get-right day for the offense. They've played in a ton of bad weather games. So it's not that I didn't think that they could figure some things out on offense. I think it was just huge that they got an opportunity to do that. Ever since Odell went down, they've felt like one of the worst offenses in the league that just really lean on strictly running the football. So to get an opportunity to mix in some actual passing concepts and figure out who they want to be as an offense, because when you get to the playoffs, which it looks like this Browns team is going to do, you can't just run the ball 90% of the time. You do need to have some sort of a passing game to lean on, and it was good to see them do that. So that was the most exciting thing to me about the Browns, was getting Jarvis Landry going as a go-to receiving target, getting some chemistry going with Baker Mayfield, who looked pretty good in this game other than the throw in the red zone. If you're on Twitter, you probably saw it, the missed throw, really. But yeah, other than that, Baker looked pretty good in this game, and the defense got the job done without Myles Garrett out there. So the Browns pretty much on a hot track to make the playoffs at this point. I don't know what their upside is, but just for the Browns to make the playoffs and find out that they have a head coach that you really like, that alone is really exciting. Then we've got the Arizona Cardinals staying put at 12. To me, this was not the worst loss in the world. You're rolling out a banged-up Kyler Murray. You miss the game-winning field goal with like 45 seconds left. That gives the Patriots good field position. A questionable Isaiah Simmons late hit then basically gives the Patriots an opportunity to make the game-winning field goal on the other side. So, to me, they were the better team on Sunday. It just didn't land their way, if you will. So the Cardinals are going to stay put. I think they're fine right where they are. They're going to win about 9-10 games, probably get that 6 or 7 seed in the NFC. Won't be an easy out because Kyler is a baller. But they definitely have some things to figure out moving into next year. Got to get more physical up front on both sides of the ball. And to me, also got to figure out some consistency on offense, play calling wise. Then the Ravens at 11. Again, kind of hard to know what to do with them this week. They're obviously struggling. But I think after they lose to the Steelers, which I think they will, you see this team kind of get back on track and be a wild card team in the AFC. Now, they do need to correct some of those things, but this is not a team that I'm comfortable betting against doing that as we move forward. Culture and historical success always plays a factor in these power rankings, and the Ravens are definitely a team that is, I think, going to respond to this adversity. I don't think they finished the season 6-10, but definitely going to be fascinating to see if and how they can do it with all this adversity, because they definitely have the cards stacked against them. But if Lamar is the quarterback that everyone preaches that he is, you would think that they'll be able to rally and he can make enough plays to get this team into the playoffs. Then we have a tier gap up into the top 10, and I think all these 10 teams remaining have a chance at a Super Bowl, even if it's at descending likelihood. So that's going to start with the Indianapolis Colts at number 10. Colts fans remain just pissed at me because I won't call this an elite defense. And I know they had players out this week, but look, the Colts defense it's not the 2018 Bears. It's not the 17 Jags, the Legion of Boom. Like, this is not a team that can win games on their defense alone. They need the offense to also pick up the slack and score, 20 points a week. They're just a very solid football team, but I don't see super high ceilings on either side of the ball right now. They probably have a higher upside on defense, but, offensively, they aren't explosive. Phillip Rivers, riding a very thin line, needs to basically play perfect and throw with great anticipation and be an excellent decision maker every week. And the run game just hasn't been as good as you would have expected. So, Colts are fine. I think they're a playoff team, but in a rough spot right now. After losing to the Titans, they're going to fall behind the race there in the AFC South to the Titans, who are going to climb up to the number 9 spot. Titans are just actually kind of a boom or bust team. They rely on big runs from A.J. Brown after the catch and Derrick Henry kind of taking over the game, and they got that this week. If you don't get those, I don't really trust Ryan Tannehill as a crutch, as a fallback, as a guy that can carry this offense, and I don't really trust this defense to dominate. So maybe they could get 3-4 straight weeks of just these explosive games of offense. It's in them. We've seen them do that 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row, but you're kind of rolling the dice because if you don't get those big plays on offense, what does this team really have? It's not all that pretty, to be honest. Then you got the Bucs dropping down 3 spots. Really tough team to break down here. You got probably the second best roster in the NFL. This team can play defense, but this is really more about the offense. And I think it's safe to say that Tom Brady is just not playing very high-level quarterback right now. He did for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, but just has not passed the eye test now for about 2 months. This goes back to the offseason. Putting him in the Bruce Arians scheme. How is that going to fit? This is not even close, like the most vertical attacking offense in the league. Tom Brady, outside of 1 year when he had Randy Moss, has been a nickel and diming quarterback, really an attention to detail, short to intermediate passing first kind of guy. That is just not what Bruce Arians likes to do. So the question was, how does Brady mesh with Arians? Does Arians adjust with Tom Brady to Tom Brady's limited skill set at his age, or just his limited skill set, period? But it just isn't coming together, and I thought that it would this late in the season. I thought we would actually see them struggle more early on, and there were some struggles early on, but it seems to be getting worse here. There's just not a lot of chemistry, and now a month away from the playoffs, that is a very short amount of time for this team to figure it out and be playing and clicking at the levels that they need to truly compete for a Super Bowl here. So I'm not ready to rule them out. You're still talking about Tom Brady and the best group of receivers in the NFL and a great defense, so there's obviously a lot of potential here, but you got to be concerned with what you're seeing at this point in time. Then the Rams, they are going to stay put after losing to the Niners. I just think this is the right spot for the Rams. They've had some big wins. They've had some rough losses. They are what they are. They're a really solid offense. If they get off script, you don't want to lean on Jared Goff too much. And they're awesome on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think losing a close game to the Niners really taught us a whole lot about the Rams. So I feel pretty good about where they're at. But the Buffalo Bills are going to climb up 2 spots ahead of the Rams. They just have so many playmakers on offense. Josh Allen is definitely slowed down from his first month, but he's still a better quarterback than he was in the first few years of his career. You'll get the occasional head-scratching mistake there, but they do so many other things well that you're able to kind of ignore it. The Bills are just one of these teams that they have so much talent and they know who they are that they just keep coming. So you really got to play well to beat the Bills, and I think they've got a chance, even if it's not a big chance. Then the Saints are going to drop down 2. It's a hard team to know what to do with right now because with the way this defense is playing right now, with a healthy Drew Brees, I do think they're the best team in the NFC, but with Taysom Hill out there, that's just not the case. And Drew Brees, as much as we want to say he can come back healthy, he's dealing with 12 cracked ribs. that's not going to just flip a script and then all of a sudden Drew Brees, who the last 2-3 years has not been the same in the final push of the season. It's just very difficult to know what does Drew Brees look like when he does come back. So, like I said, with a healthy Drew Brees, I think the Saints are the best team in the NFC, but as we sit here today, that's just not a lock. So the Packers are going to climb up 2 spots. I was really impressed with what they did against the Bears, and I even said against the Colts that they actually had a really good day of offense. Just some pretty big mistakes. The three fumbles really bit them in the ass. The defense is a problem. I'm not impressed by doing what they did against the Bears. It is what it is. But with Aaron Rodgers playing like this, so cool, calm, and collected, on such a great chemistry with Devontae Adams right now, offensive line is playing so great. And then you can see what having Allen Lazard means to this team. Now, he gets banged up in this game. I don't think it's serious, but to have that number 2 option that Rodgers can trust, I think really opens the door for this offense. They did give Aaron Rodgers the first round receiver of his career in Tavon Austin, probably more as a kick returner, which they do need, but an interesting pickup to see how LaFleur will integrate an actually fast receiver into the offense. Just something to keep an eye on there. But then we've got the Seahawks also moving up a spot. Honestly, they just kind of showed up and picked up the win against the Eagles. They didn't really have to do much in this game. They're getting more back towards that sort of run the ball, playing defense, which to me is actually a better version of the Seahawks because you know that they're going to have those big vertical shots to DK Metcalf. It's not like they're going to have a low ceiling offense just because they want to run the ball more. I think that keeps the defense fresh and healthy. It increases the completion percentage and likeliness that you're going to connect on those deep balls because they're set up more. So just a more balanced version of the Seahawks over the last month of the season. I think Pete Carroll is much more in his comfort zone when this team is like that. So the Seahawks to me are a team that maybe on a week-to-week basis don't necessarily have the upside of a team like maybe the Packers or the Saints or even the Bucs or the Bills or some of these guys, but in close, scrappy games, there's very few teams and few quarterbacks that I trust more than the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson and a defense that's playing so much better over the last month of the season. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, not much to really say. They should dominate the Ravens without Lamar Jackson, continuing their undefeated season. And then the Kansas City Chiefs staying put at number 1. I'm sorry, Chiefs fans, if you want me to say more about the Chiefs, but there's really not that much to say. These guys are like your Golden State Warriors a couple years ago. You just actually have to play perfect to beat the Chiefs. Because even if they don't, any little mistakes you make, they are going to make you pay for them in the worst ways possible. And there really shouldn't be a debate, even though the Steelers are undefeated, there really should not be a debate that the Chiefs are the best team in football. So there's your Week 13 Power Rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you hit that like button down below. Let me know in the comments what you think. Cheers as always, and we'll see you for the next one. Peace out.